On this edition, I'm going to break down and predict the upcoming fight in the UFC 167 card between George St-Pierre and Johny Hendricks. So what I'm going to do in this film is going to break down both fighters and do my predictions. So I'll start with GSP. Now, George St-Pierre is the king of the welterweight division, countless title defenses, one of the most balanced fighters in all of mixed martial arts, very few holds, if any holds in his game, a fantastic wrestler, a superb athlete, a very balanced striking game, his kicks, his boxing, his jab that he implements, his explosiveness, and his ability to change levels and be unpredictable, and to also take people down and to use his wrestling to control fights. And I know people tend to say that George St-Pierre isn't the most entertaining of fighters, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Is that George St-Pierre is made a living off of being able to dictate where the fight takes place and controlling people. George St-Pierre has the ability to finish fights. He does take very few risks at times. But he has a skill set that can very much be a problem for Johny Hendricks if it's to get into later rounds. Is that he has a much better gas tank. I think his speed and his deceptiveness and his ability to give multiple looks can be a problem, and his ability to wear on people and to lean on them and to make people exhausted. Is that we've seen George St-Pierre take good wrestlers, and this is a guy who has never wrestled in college before. Is that he's just evolved into such a great wrestler. Between his single and his double leg takedown, he is a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, where GSP should be successful. But just to elaborate is the fact that take Hendricks down. I think if he is to make it to 3 rounds, I think Hendricks is going to be exhausted, especially fighting at George St-Pierre's pace. Take him down often early on. May not be the most entertaining way, but you could definitely probably work in a submission, maybe a TKO, or win a very, very dominant decision if he is to incorporate a very wrestling-heavy game plan. But at the same time, will come at the expense of you not being an entertaining fighter. But you know what? Some people do love the grappling aspect, and I really do think if he is to wear on Johny Hendricks, a finish is possible in the 4th and 5th round. It's just a matter of GSP really is going to work for it. But I would not stand toe-to-toe with Hendricks early on. I would try and gas him out, have his gas tank and his size work against him later on. But it all depends on what GSP wants to do. He does have the speed to move around and to avoid the strikes, but Hendricks always seems to connect. So I could see possible late round TKO, late round submission, but predominantly I'm leaning towards a decision victory for George St-Pierre. But that's in the later rounds if he is to finish, and decision obviously if he is to make it the full 5 rounds. So that's where I see GSP being successful. So Johny Hendricks, and I know we've sat here, and I sat here and I said that Diaz and the Condits and all these guys present problems for GSP, and that people could possibly dethrone him. But then it comes to actually implementing that game plan, and GSP always seems to have an answer for people. It may not be the most entertaining answer, but GSP is one of those rare breeds that can make fighters or take fighter skills and almost make them irrelevant. But Johny Hendricks has 2 skill sets that make it very difficult and an interesting challenge for GSP. Is that he does have the wrestling skill set, a very well-decorated collegiate wrestler from Oklahoma State, very strong, very powerful, and I think he has the wrestling to at least equalize or neutralize GSP's takedowns in the first couple of rounds when his gas tank is remotely fresh. And even if he is to be taken down, I think he could get back up, kind of like how Josh Koscheck was able to do so. The takedowns did happen, but Koscheck was able to get right back up, but it was a process that did wear him out along the way. And I also think he has the knockout powers. That Hendricks is not a guy who is going to pick you apart and put together combinations and make you look foolish. Hendricks is a headhunter. He's a guy that has remarkable power, especially for a southpaw. He's got that very powerful left hand. And he can finish fights with his right hand too. He's just a very strong guy for the division, small and compact, and he's very explosive. Is he faster, more explosive than GSP? No, but it's rather deceiving for a guy of his size who is very stocky and powerful. He is, that fist always seems to land and is actually very fast how he does do so. We've seen him land on guys that are remarkable strikers, between the Campmans, between the Condits, and that power is just unreal. Obviously, then again, we saw what one of the biggest disadvantages for Johny Hendricks is that he is a big guy for the division, not height-wise, but at least stature-wise, is that his gas tank tends to fade around the middle of the 3rd round. And that's a big disadvantage, to say the least, especially against a fighter who is pristine and very athletic and has great gas tank like George St-Pierre. So Hendricks has to make quick work of GSP, or at least has to come out and connect and dictate the pace early on. He has to keep this fight standing. I would not be surprised, though. Johny Hendricks does have a great wrestling game, does have good takedowns, has a developing submission game. I do believe he's a blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but he's got decent submission defense, but it's nowhere along the levels of George St-Pierre. He is a good wrestler. But when it comes down to grappling, George St-Pierre is easily the better grappler and the better overall balanced fighter. Where I see Johny Hendricks being successful, I think he's got to come out early, keep this one standing, and he's got to connect. And if he is to connect, he's got to swarm all over GSP. I think he's got to finish this one within the first 2.5 to 3 rounds. If not, George St. Pierre is going to have his way with him and really set the pace. And he's got to really, he's got to land, and he's got to do it often. And he's going to swing and he's going to miss, but he's got to pressure George St. Pierre, and he has got to make the most of his opportunities. If this one gets past 3 rounds, I see this being George St. Pierre's fight. So I think Hendricks, the only way he can do this is if he is defeat George St. Pierre via TKO or knockout within the first 2.5, maybe 3 rounds. No mystery of that at all. So the headhunter has to connect, and the headhunter has to keep it standing. So that's where I see Johny Hendricks being successful. So where my prediction lies, and it's so tough to bet against George St. Pierre, is that he has continued to have success. I know people think for new reasons on why people can defeat him, but I really think Johny Hendricks has all the right tools. Even though Gas Tank is working against him, I think those first 2.5 rounds, 3 rounds are going to be very interesting, to say the least, is that Hendricks can connect, and people say, oh, he's not going to connect on Condit, good head movement, better striker, but he landed, and he landed at will. And, I don't think GSP has a better chin than Condit. I mean, GSP has been wobbled before, and Hendricks' power will definitely test his chin and could definitely wobble him and send him and put him to sleep. So, I would love to be safe here and bet George St. Pierre, but I really do think Johny Hendricks can be the guy to do so. But it does come down to if he can get it done in the first 2.5 to 3 rounds. And that's a gamble I'm willing to take, is that I think GSP can win this one by decision, potential submission or TKO in the rounds 4 and 5. But I'm going to go with the underdog. I'm going to say that Johny Hendricks will get taken down. He will also fend off the takedowns as well. But I think he's going to connect with George St. Pierre. He's going to wobble him, and he's either going to win this fight via TKO or knockout and be crowned the new welterweight champion in the UFC. So I'm going to take Johny Hendricks defeating George St. Pierre on the UFC 167 card via TKO or knockout. And that's what I have for this edition. It's Kyle Delaney signing off. I'm out of here.